Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera bersama saya Nia Rozman dalam Niaga AWANI. Seperti biasa jam ini kami akan bawakan perkembangan terkini niaga dan ekonomi dari tempatan hingga ke antarabangsa bersama ahli panel jemputan untuk mengkupas sesuatu isu lebih mendalam. Dan saya akan mulakan dengan laporan pertama adalah pengeluaran KWSP di mana kumpulan wang simpanan pekerja KWSP menegaskan tiada pindaan dirancang untuk pengeluaran penuh umur 55 dan 60 tahun untuk ahli-ahli semasa yang mencarum dengannya. Menurut KWSP, perkhidmatan pengeluaran bulanan KWSP yang sedia ada hanya terpakai kepada ahli yang menyertainya secara sukarela. Cadangan itu juga akan hanya melibatkan ahli baru buat sementara ini bagi mereka yang lahir pada atau selepas tahun 2010 dan berdaftar dengan KWSP selepas tarikh pelaksanaan kaedah baru itu. Dalam kenyataannya, KWSP menyatakan bayaran pertama di bawah kaedah mandatory itu hanya dibuat selepas ahli bersara, dijangka berlaku beberapa dekad dari sekarang. Menurutnya, cadangan itu masih diteliti dan KWSP memberi jaminan sebarang keputusan berhubung pengeluaran simpanan akan dibuat dengan pertimbangan yang teliti dan selari dengan komitmen KWSP. Mekanisme pengeluaran mandatory bulanan juga akan menyelaraskan Malaysia dengan amalan di kebanyakan negara lain. Menurut KWSP, Malaysia adalah antara minoriti kecil yang masih membenarkan pengeluaran sekaligus dan bukan berkala. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim berkata kerajaan sedang dalam tindakan merangka dasar anti Alibaba, rent seeking dan mempercepat pelan hala tuju peralihan tenaga NETR. Perdana Menteri berkata perkara itu dipersetujui dalam mesyuarat Majlis Tindakan Ekonomi Negara M10 yang diadakan pada Isnin.
Dalam satu kenyataan pada Selasa, Anwar yang juga Menteri Kewangan berkata budaya Alibaba memberi dampak negatif kepada ekonomi dan kerajaan serius untuk menangani dan membasmi aktiviti ini. Katanya anggaran kerugian mencecah sekitar 1% daripada keluaran dalam negara kasar KDNK dan melibatkan aspek perolehan, pelesenan, pemberian permit dan kuota serta pemberian subsidi dan geran. Kementerian Ekonomi dan Jabatan Peguam Negara dengan penglibatan kementerian dan agensi kerajaan akan mengkaji dan merangka dasar dan strategi perundangan yang bersesuaian untuk membanteras aktiviti rent seeking dan membentangkan cadangan kepada Jemaah Menteri. Sementara itu, Anwar berkata mesyuarat M10 turut bersetuju untuk mempercepat inisiatif NETR sebagai pemangkin kepada strategi mengangkat negara sebagai peneraju serantau dalam tenaga boleh baharu. Beliau berkata projek flagship rintis dan inisiatif NETR bagi meningkatkan penyertaan industri mengenai hala tuju baharu kerajaan dalam meneroka sumber tenaga baharu dan membentuk permintaan pasaran serta mengenal pasti sumber kewangan untuk menangani jurang pembiayaan bagi projek tersebut. Melangkah ke hadapan, Anwar berkata M10 akan terus merumuskan langkah dan inisiatif baru untuk menangani pelbagai tantangan melibatkan perekonomian negara bagi memastikan penambahbaikan tata kelola serta perubahan struktur secara teratur demi meningkatkan potensi ekonomi negara.
Seterusnya, Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat akan berusaha memasukkan ekonomi penjagaan ke dalam perancangan dan pembangunan ekonomi negara. Menurut Menterinya, Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, aktiviti penjagaan anak oleh wanita selalu tidak dibayar dan tidak diiktiraf. Meskipun ia menyebabkan masa wanita terpaksa dibahagikan daripada mengejar peluang dan cita-cita.
Care work constitutes the foundation on which our very existence depends. It includes house chores and direct face-to-face personal care activities such as nurturing the sick, caring for the elderly, feeding a baby, or teaching young children. Overwhelmingly done by women. Many care activities are often unpaid and unrecognized, leaving them with little time to pursue opportunities and growth.
Jelas Nancy, pendekatan 3R iaitu pengiktirafan, pengurangan dan pengagihan semula perlu direalisasikan bagi menangani isu penjagaan tanpa gaji oleh wanita. Tambahnya berdasarkan data yang dikeluarkan, purata masa dihabiskan untuk menyediakan penjagaan anak untuk lelaki dan wanita dalam isi rumah. Beliau berkata demikian dalam ucapannya sempena sambutan 50 tahun tabung penduduk Pertumbuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu UNFPA di Ibu Negara pada Selasa.
All right, we want to talk about China's, which on the brink of consumer deflation, which has rate inflation 0% for the second time since pandemic COVID-19, and China's producer prices fell at their fastest pace in over 7 years in June, while consumer prices teetered on the edge of deflation, adding to the case for policymakers to use more stimulus to revive sluggish demand. The worsening factory gate price deflation and the move by consumer prices towards deflation for the first time since February 2021 bode ill for China's economic growth. Momentum in China's post-pandemic recovery has slowed from a brisk pickup seen in the first quarter, with demand for industrial and consumer products weakening, raising concerns about the health of the world's second largest economy. To help understand further, ready online is Kelvin Wong, Senior Market Analyst, Owanda. I want to say thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us this morning. We want to go further with the effects of China deflation, facing China deflation. So it's 0%, the China price. They are said to be the three scariest words in US industry. In general, it means 30% to 50% less than what you can possibly make something for in the US. In the worst case, it means below your cost of material. So Kelvin, how does this situation may impact its competitiveness within the global market?
Yes, sure. So firstly, if you look at the situation in China right now, there will be a risk of a liquidity trap scenario. Why would I say that? Because if you look at the last couple of months, there will be an incremental increase in money supply with China. But however, this money supply in China do not actually filter down to the global economy. Instead, they actually went up into savings. The savings rate actually increases in China in the last 4 to 5 months. So if you look at this situation over here, is that this deflationary spiral has led to what I call a potential confidence decline in the local Chinese economy.
Kelvin?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Saying that usually for countries that is affected, especially Asian, has been trade partner with China for over the years, century even. So how can we help us understand how does China deflation affects the commodity exports, especially that has country commodity export, and how can it affect the global market finance actually?
Okay. So if you look at this situation here, definitely if you look at some of the ASEAN countries that has pretty much a significant trade dependent with China, will definitely face a bit of what I call a negative feedback loop. So that is actually pretty much prevalent in Singapore, where we start to see Singapore exports numbers decline significantly in the last 4 to 5 months. And potentially there's actually a high chance that Singapore might start to face a technical recession, where the Q2 flash GDP number will be up this Friday due to a very lackluster ISM manufacturing data that's so up from Singapore in a month and a half or so ago. So what we could see over here is that if this, what I call it, factory gate prices continue to decline, consumer prices continue to decline in China, it actually does not bode well to the ASEAN economy in general.
We understand that China deflation contribute to lower demand and prices for goods in other countries. So basically, maybe they say you get a lower price. But but if it's happening in China, is it going to affect the lower demand and prices in other countries, especially?
Okay, so the plus point over here is definitely it will actually reduce prices of manufacturing products. That is, it could actually kind of cool down this ongoing global demand, global sticky inflation situation, especially that is actually prevalent in the other developed nations like in UK, EU, and certain aspects US. But however, it seems to us that over here is that the central bankers from the developed nations, especially the Fed, the BOE, in some aspect, the ECB, they're actually pretty much in favor of having a longer period of higher interest rate environment. So it seems like at this point, in my opinion, that based on their latest monetary policy guidance, they're actually looking to actually embark of a kind of a demand destruction scenario to actually push down consumer spending and business spending much further, so that to actually kind of kill off higher inflation expectation in the months forward.
Definitely, talking about inflation, it definitely brings effects to currency and interest rate. And as you can see, Malaysia's currency, ringgit especially, is inclined. So maybe from the issue of deflation, how will it bring the implication of effects towards other countries' currency and interest rate, as this is we can say that the flow of how we do business around the world?
Yes, so if you look at the situation in Asia, especially Asia, in the last, I would say 1 to 3 years, especially commodities-related country like Malaysia, for instance, they have a very strong correlation with the Chinese yuan, right? So what you see the last 6 or 7 months over here is that this ASEAN currency, like the Malaysian ringgit, has been weakening with the dollar in tandem with the Chinese yuan. So at this point now over here is that we got to actually be very mindful that the China Central Bank, do they want to embark a policy of devaluation? That means to actually weaken the yuan much further to drive up their exports numbers to boost a bit of growth, that what they did in 2015, 2016. So if such a scenario materializes, that means we're talking about a forced yuan devaluation. We could see definitely further potential weakness in ASEAN currencies. But on the other hand, over here is that we also got to be mindful that currencies actually move in tandem with other global economic forces. That if you look at this situation in the last couple of days, we see a bit of dollar weakness coming back into the major currency. So if this starts to trickle down to the Chinese yuan, in fact, if we are talking right now, the Chinese yuan actually strengthened slightly against the dollar by about 0.3 to 0.5%. That's pretty minor for a single day performance. We're going to look at longer term. If this softness in the dollar starts to be prevalent in the Chinese yuan, we could see a bit of what I call negation on this 7 months of, we call it, weakness that is seen in this ASEAN currency.
All right, that is the currency parts. Maybe we can focus about the other countries which we can see have potential to be affected, maybe in a small, big ways. So maybe how can countries reduce their dependence on China, enhance their resilience to external shocks caused by the deflation? How will each country monetary policy and even exchange rate adjustment influence other countries' monetary policy and exchange rate? Maybe we can start with Malaysia first.
Oh, okay. If you look at the situation in Malaysia right now, is that one of the primary driver that is actually causing this Malaysian ringgit weakness is actually due to a relatively higher government debt GDP as per percentage of GDP is one of the highest in the ASEAN region. So I would believe that the plus point over here is that if we start to see the external dollar weakness
could potentially elevate this ongoing 7 months of Malaysia ringgit weakness. But in the longer term, I do believe that structural reform needs to be made, especially reducing the debt burden of foreign debt for Malaysia. And also, if you look at the situation right now, inflationary pressure in the ASEAN region has also started to temper off pretty much slightly in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 months. So that very much over here is that oil prices got to actually remain pretty much stable below the $100 US dollar per barrel. So if that's a scenario being, we call it militarized, we could actually see a bit of what I call normalization of pretty much hawkish monetary policy to actually move towards more of a accommodative monetary policy stance to actually elevate this growth, this what I call it, this weak external demand growth as we are witnessing at this point in time.
All right. Kevin, China has inflation dropped 0% for the second time since pandemic COVID-19, and they are target to achieve their economy contribution to 5%. Do you see this still achievable by this year, actually?
Okay, so it's a very unique situation in China is that the top policymaker every year they will actually, before the start of the year, they will actually announce a hard target, okay, a hard target of 5% or 6% or so. So the situation in China right now over here is that they do not also want to actually create a problem that lead to this situation right now. That means they actually kind of introduce very strong fiscal stimulus measure, which create a kind of unproductive environment in the Chinese economy. That means, i.e., you see huge, tremendous spending in infrastructure and property development, which led to this 1 to 2 years of property debt overhang. So China top policy makers do not want to actually follow this path of unproductive way of stimulating the economy. So what I reckon over here is that if the developed nation, especially US, maintaining their high interest rate environment, China, I reckon they got to actually reduce their year-end 5% GDP growth target to a much lower number that is achievable and sustainable if they would actually pursue this kind of a targeted fiscal stimulus measure rather than the all-out stimulus measure that they enacted in the past.
All right, I want to say thank you very much to Kelvin Wong, Senior Market Analyst ONDA, for helping us understand the importance of deflation, especially in China, and how it will impact Asian countries and how Malaysia can brace the weather impact of the economies. And everything, all of discussion will be uploaded in astrawani.com and all platform digital Astrawani.
Banyak soalan pasal Astro Fiber kat social media. Apa kata I tolong jawabkan satu? Soalan ni dari Bella. Dia tanya, saya dah ada Astro. Kalau nak pasang Astro Fiber berapa? Kalau dah ada Astro, memang untunglah ambil Astro dengan Wi-Fi kencang sekali. Dekat situ memang jimat dah. Dan jangan risau, nak maintain channels boleh, tak nak lari bajet pun boleh. Tanya je, kita bincang. Contohlah kan, pack movies dengan jenama internet lain paling kurang pun sebulan RM225. Tapi dengan pack movies dengan Wi-Fi kencang boleh jimat RM30 sebulan. Banyak tu Bella. Layari astro.com dan my/fiber untuk info lanjut tentang pack dan promosi terkini.
Malaysia merekodkan kedatangan pelancong asing seramai 4.5 juta setakat suku pertama tahun ini, sekaligus menyaksikan perkembangan positif industri pelancongan negara.
Malaysia, Indonesia dan Singapura berisiko tinggi berhadapan jerebu teruk pada tahun ini.
Cuaca pada 2023 lebih kering dan panas akibat El Nino.
Jalankan siasatan berhubung kegiatan jual beli pekerja asing di negara ini.
Jika berlaku juga, satu tindakan yang keras perlu diambil.
Eksklusif untuk pelanggan Astro. Astro Rewards menjemput anda ke Astro Showcase 2023.
Sudah bersedia?
Alami satu malam luar biasa. Pelbagai rancangan mengujakan yang memukau diri anda. Persembahan daripada bintang-bintang yang sensasi. Ayo, terokai masa depan yang pasti menakjubkan. Stream sepenuhnya dengan Astro Baharu.
Asking the tough questions is what we do every day here on Astro AWANI. Catch me every weeknights at 10:30 p.m. across all AWANI platforms.
And we're back on Niaga AWANI. We're going to continue on discussion about funding societies. The largest digital financial platform for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in Southeast Asia has entered into an agreement with Chinese Berjaya Kredit Sdn Bhd to provide financing to 1,500 registered used car dealers, UCD. Through this collaboration, eligible UCDs can apply for financing to facilitate the purchase of dealer floor stock and offer attractive hire purchase solutions to their customers. And I'm going to welcome you with our guest who's ready on the line is Chai Kin Put, Country Head Funding Societies Malaysia. I want to say I shall call you KP. Thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic to have you here. Maybe I could start with how might this, talking about funding societies, how might this partnership between funding societies, Chinese and Berjaya Credit impact the pricings of used cars in the market, perhaps the development of used car industry in the long run?
Yep. Good morning. Thanks for having us. So we are very excited about the partnership. So Chinese Berjaya Credit, obviously a household name in providing hire purchase financing for used car for consumers. I think not only in Malaysia, but in the key markets that they are in. FS, obviously, newer kid to the block. I think we started financing used car dealers since 2019, but we have grown quite well since, thanks to some product innovation, solid partners that we have, and of course, a bit of luck, right? So I think COVID is bad for many things, but I think one thing that it helps a lot is basically bringing people to go digital. So we have disbursed close to more than 1 billion ringgit to used car dealers, financing over 30,000 cars, right? And I think this partnership is, we are very bullish because it completes the value chain in providing financing access to both consumer and dealers who are historically not within the bank's risk appetite. And there are 3 key reasons why this is a win-win partnership for everyone in the ecosystem, right? I think definitely for FS and Chinese, it reduces our customer acquisition costs because we are essentially leveraging on each other's marketing resources to reach out to the consumers and used car dealers at scale. The other piece is that some of these savings in customer acquisition costs will actually then be passed on to the dealers, and hopefully it also then trickle down to the consumer. So it essentially benefits every party in the ecosystem. I think the other key piece as to how it will benefit both the dealers and the consumer is really in terms of customer experience. We already have a supply chain financing platform where dealers can apply for financing seamlessly digitally. But I think the phase 2 is really then how do we connect the system of Chinese Berjaya Credit with our own system to enable a seamless experience across B2B to C, right? So seamless experience for used car dealers to obtain post-lock financing and then subsequently for consumers to apply for hire purchase financing.
Talking about benefits usually comes with also challenges. Maybe you can share with us what are the macroeconomic factors should be considered when evaluating the feasibility and sustainability of providing financing to registered used car dealers, especially.
Yeah, I think we are always very cognizant, and I think for us, given that most of our financing is short-term, usually 4 months and below, I think on average around 60 days. So we are able to sort of iterate our credit assessment to react to macroeconomic conditions. I think one that we are obviously watching very closely is basically the increase in the interest rate environment and how that trickles down to consumers' affordability and whether the demand for used car, actually not only used car, demand for cars in general will still continue to be robust in the second half. I think at this point of time, we do see that the demand continue to be strong, but obviously it's something that we are watching very closely. And I think this is where the partnership also add a lot of value to us. I think Chinese being a key player in the industry, they will be able to sort of share pertinent information with us about the industry and vice versa, right? We also be able to share with them some of the observations that we see among the used car dealers.
All right, from benefit to challenges, I want to see even more on the initiative. We've seen, I want to add a little bit data from DOSM. They have initially reported that employment rate, which is fell to 3.5%. We can see in May this year. So how could this financing initiative further contribute to job creation and employment opportunities within the used car industry? Especially, can we see it within short term for now? Because we understand that economy with the ringgits are going incline. So maybe with taking all of these considerations, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think, as you know, SMEs are key contributor to employment in Malaysia. I think not only Malaysia, but also in many other countries as well. And used car dealers are majority SMEs, so they are small, medium businesses who employ X number of persons. So by supporting their businesses, and as and when the business grows, they will be able to employ more people. And I think this concept does not apply to just used car dealers, but generally in all the SMEs that we serve, right? So our motive has always been to serve as many SMEs as possible, and that leads to job creation or maintenance as and when the SME grow and able to sustain their business. I think, and that is similar to the used car segments that we are seeing.
Maybe we can share how might this financial initiative impact the overall stability and resilience of, we can say, of the financial sector, considering potential changes in risk exposure and even asset quality.
Yeah, I think historically these segments have always fallen sort of out of banks' risk appetite. But I think given that we are coming in, and also obviously with Chinese who has been in the higher purchase market for consumer for many years now, I think we will be able to sort of provide the support as and when there is also a bit of pullback from the banking institutions from a credit perspective, or if there's any deterioration in macro conditions. I think more important is that I think we leverage on a lot of alternative data. So I think macro environment in general may or may not look bad in the second half, but I think given the sort of data that we are able to obtain from partners, from the 30,000 or more than 30,000 of used cars that we have served, and the current pool of used car dealers that we have, we are able to go a bit more granular in terms of supporting the dealers who are still being able to maintain a good business. And obviously, I think some of those where we do see business going down, we can gradually sort of slow down or reduce our exposure to them.
All right, maybe you can share with us who's your corporation or who you're working together, maybe reach out any agencies to work together to help in achieving this initiative.
Yeah. Also, from a partnership perspective, I think it's very exciting for Malaysia in second half. So we have, I think, 15 to 20 partnerships that we are waiting to execute and scale up. And of course, not forgetting existing partners, right? So I think to your points on the government agencies that you have mentioned, we actually see the partnership coming from 4 key sectors. One is obviously the tech players who we have traditionally always been working with. Likewise, corporates. I think the other piece is really supply chain that allow us to, supply chain partners that allow us to reach the businesses that are outside of the Klang Valley, Penang and Johor, where currently majority of our customers are based in. So we're trying to work with all the supply chain partners to basically reach out to businesses in the East Coast and East Malaysia. I think financial inclusion is not just about the major cities, but I think it's not enough to just focus on the major cities. So we are actually actively trying to see how we reach out to the areas that are outside of the key cities that I mentioned earlier. I think from a government agency perspective, this year particularly, we see a lot of interest in terms of coming on board to fund some of the businesses that we currently finance by leveraging on our credit processes. So we are essentially doing the credit assessment for them and understanding their parameter. We are able to design certain programs that enable us to channel the funding to these MSMEs that require financing.
All right, I want to say thank you very much to Chai Kin Poon, Country Head Funding Societies Malaysia. I definitely want to say congratulations on this cooperation between the Partnership Funding Societies, Chinese and even Berjaya Credit. I'm hoping for the best in the future. And all of our discussion will be uploaded in astroawani.com. Tidak terlintas di benak fikiran pasangan anak muda dari Tumpuan ini untuk muncul sebagai usahawan tekstil. Apa tidaknya, dalam usia remaja mereka berhempas pulas cari pekerjaan dan perniagaan demi kelangsungan hidup. Namun seperti pepatah, rezeki tidak pernah salah tempat di mana akhirnya pasangan anak muda ini berjaya mencipta nama sebagai pengeluar tudung dan pembekal kain dari Taiwan.
Untuk cari pelanggan ni, kalau nak cerita panjang, tapi kita pendekkan dia. Jadi saya dengan bos saya struggle gila lah buat macam FB ad. Kita belajar dari segi FB ad bermulanya daripada Facebook, kain. Selepas tu kita belajar step by step. Alhamdulillah sampai sekarang ni platform TikTok pula. Bila TikTok ni lah berkembangnya daripada kain pergi kepada tudung. Kita asal mula daripada kain pasir lah. Jadi selepas kita mula daripada kain tu selama 4 tahun. Lepas tu alhamdulillah diberi rezeki buat tudung jenama sendiri dengan nama Hana Tajima juga. Kain keluar daripada kain ni kita buat jahit tes sendiri lah. Maknanya siapa mari sini ukur-ukur boleh jahit siap lalu. Baju, baju kurung, mini kurung, semualah. Semua jenis baju untuk fashion wanita. Selain daripada baju kita ada macam untuk lace, macam untuk kalau orang nak tepuh macam untuk perkahwinan lah. Maknanya nak buat baju perkahwinan pun boleh. Dan juga untuk government pun nak buat untuk kontrak macam baju batik untuk sekolah-sekolah pun semua boleh lah. InsyaAllah boleh kita cuba request. Kalau ada request tu insyaAllah kita cuba buat.
Memiliki satu cawangan di Tumpuan luar dari Bandar Kota Baru tidak menghalang pemilik perniagaan ini mengembangkan perniagaannya dengan melantik ejen jualan di seluruh negara. Tumpuan turut diberikan dalam menguasai media sosial dengan memperuntukkan sejumlah hasil jualan untuk pemasaran dalam media sosialnya.
Timbulnya TikTok Shop tu, alhamdulillah kita belajar daripada tidak profesional jadi kepada profesional. Jadi seperti sekarang ni lah orang tengok kita alhamdulillah nampak sedap, nampak senang. Tapi nak boleh kejumpa senang ni memang kena struggle gila lah, kena kuat lah. Maknanya dulu upload lebih ke dalam seminggu tu 3 video. Sekarang ni bila kita baca syarat terma dia TikTok Shop ni, sehari kurang-kurangnya 2 video lah. Buat live tu memang sentiasa buat lah hari-hari. Boleh dikatakan hari-hari lah. Yes, petang, malam. Untuk first dulu kita bermula dengan modal untuk spend Facebook tu RM15 untuk beberapa je lah. Kadang-kadang ada sehari, tak ingat lah dulu dah. Jadi kalau nak ikutkan total semualah, setiap bulan tu lebih kurang dalam belas-belas ribu lah. Spend untuk marketing untuk online sahaja. Walaupun kedai tersembunyi di mana-mana pun tak ada masalah. Yang penting kita kena pandai untuk ads lah. Sebagai contoh lah, maknanya bila kita keluar lebih dalam contohlah sebulan kita keluar RM10,000 untuk modal ad lah. Ini untuk saya punya lah. Orang lain saya tak tahulah. Kita keluar ke dalam RM10,000. Dari segi keuntungan tu 2 kali ganda lah. Alhamdulillah.
Pasangan Hazrin Nur Farhana alias 27 tahun merupakan pelakon dan pencipta kandungan serta pempengaruh bagi syarikatnya. Dengan memperkenalkan jenama tudung Hana Tajima, beliau mengambil masa hampir 2 tahun untuk meletakkan jenama tudungnya dalam media sosial sehingga ia mampu menjana pendapatan lumayan.
Peserta berbilang bangsa dari seluruh Malaysia telah menyawat cabaran dalam pencarian idea kreatif dan inovatif.
Innovathon will make your dreams come true.
Calon-calon yang berjaya akan membentangkan idea produk inovasi mereka dan sekaligus merebut hadiah lumayan.
Siapakah yang mampu memenuhi kriteria Innovathon?
The judging will be done by 5 professional jury members and 100 public jurors representing consumers.
Idea manakah yang akan bersaing dalam Innovathon? Mulai 15 Julai di saluran-saluran tertera dan Astro.
Cik, minta keluar daripada kenderaan.
Apa yang berlaku?
Kena tangkap.
Malu kita semua, Ma.
Saya nak minta diorang berdua ni kahwin.
Kenapa kau setuju?
Kau tak ada apa-apa hubungan dengan Saiful. So, everything happen for a reason. Macam mana dengan trauma kau tu? Kau faham kan maksud aku?
Macam-macam dugaan sebelum disatukan.
Aku terima nikah cinta Kalila.
Cinta Wrong Direction di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
The biggest mystery box. Strap yourselves in, guys. The biggest flash ever. No way. Some of the biggest challenges this competition has ever seen.
This is a dish that changed my life.
Biggest ever pressure test.
If you win today, you end up on the shelves tomorrow.
It is sublime.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Cara kita mendapat berita kian berubah. Melalui media sosial maupun saluran digital yang lain serta kaca TV. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini.
Ini perkembangan yang baru kami terima.
Berteraskan acuan verifikasi yang diamalkan supaya setiap fakta adalah sahih. Daripada analisis pelbagai sudut yang mendalam, laporan-laporan khas dan perbincangan yang membina negara. Inklusif, suara rakyat kami ajukan. Keseimbangan persepsi kami pastikan. Kerana setiap cerita mempunyai impak yang tersendiri dan perlu dibawa dengan penelitian yang terperinci. Pastikan Astro Awani menjadi pilihan anda tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada. Saluran berita paling dipercayai di Malaysia.
Foodpanda today, we have about 100,000 SMEs online on the platform. And our aim and our objective is to be able to digitize these SMEs. We must not forget that around 60 to 70% of the population still live outside the big cities in Malaysia. And this means that there's a huge population of SMEs that live in cities outside of KL, JB, Penang, for example. And our objective and our dream is to be able to provide these SMEs with a vision to have a business that is digital and to have a business that is e-commerce friendly. And we provide them with a platform so that we can empower them to make meaningful income and at the same time to make sure that they can all turn into successful entrepreneurs. So at Foodpanda, we have established best practices in terms of how these SMEs can do well on the platform. And we also undertake to bring them or impart knowledge onto them in terms of what they can do from a marketing perspective. Because a digital platform is very, very different to running a brick and mortar store. And so there's different schemes, there's different things, there's different angles that SMEs always have to look into when it comes to online marketing and establishing themselves in the digital space. And so we try to provide them with the knowledge, with the know-how, and with the best practices to be able to maximize their revenues and at the same time to remain relevant to all the customers that they want to serve. So Celcom Digi has been a great partner for us in terms of being able to empower SMEs in rural areas and outside the big cities so that we can get closer to our customers. We know that outside of the big cities, our customers want food and more to be delivered to them. And this is where we provide an opportunity to our customers and a channel to our customers to not only get their lunch, breakfast, dinners, but to get their snacks and their essential daily items as well. So we always believe in staying humble. And to this point, we always want to live by that one principle. So we don't want to ever have an ego complex, and that ensures that we remain close to our customers, we remain close to our riders, and we remain close to everyone here in the Foodpanda community. And that really drives us to go forward and above and beyond in terms of serving the stakeholders that we serve today. I think it's very important to have a community because this acts as an essential support system for whoever is looking to take the plunge and get involved in a digital business. And this community is super important for first-time entrepreneurs as well. A lot of the SMEs on our platforms are run and established by first-time entrepreneurs such as Nasi Ayam Mafia, who also rely on Celcom Digi to boost their business earnings and their business potential. And at the same time, they do rely on a community to make sure that everything is simplified for them so that their journey online is as seamless as possible. At Foodpanda, of course, we try to establish a community that includes all these vendors. We are very much prepared to be as inclusive as we can be, and we want everyone to be involved in this community. And so for us, we undertake active community building efforts But on the SME side as well, there are communities that exist to make sure that there's very few risks and to make sure that everyone can earn a decent income and also maximize their earning potential.
Assalamualaikum. A very good day. Saya Ahmad Ibrahim sebagai co-founder Siap Mafia. Mostly masa PKP dan COVID, kebanyakan bisnes-bisnes kecil dia dah banyak yang turn down, maksudnya yang tutup. Jadi kami evolve, lepas tu kami join platform delivery macam Foodpanda. Jadi kami bersurvive sampai 2 tahun PKP tu. So kami sign up Foodpanda pada awal 2019. Dan rezeki kami sebab kami sign up awal, bila PKP dan COVID datang, kami dah boleh apply dengan baik lah. Maksudnya kami punya kedai dah ready untuk terima order yang banyak semasa PKP. Sale makin naik selepas kami viral beberapa kali menggunakan media sosial. Sebab kami pernah viral di Twitter sebab kami punya ordering system. Maksudnya order kami, walaupun kami kedai lautan, tapi kami ada sistem ordering yang lebih teratur lah.
Bertemu semua dalam Niaga AWANI, dan pada tahun 2021 kita melihat Kementerian Mosti pada ketika itu mengumumkan penubuhan meranti, iaitu merupakan satu bentuk gabungan antara teknologi Park Malaysia TPM dan juga Magic pada ketika itu, dan juga meranti pada tujuannya sudah pastilah untuk mengoperasikan dari segi pengkomersialan teknologi di negara ini dan juga menjadi satu bentuk pembangkit kepada agenda inovasi negara ini bergerak ke hadapan, dan juga sudah pun memasuki tahun kedua penubuhannya pada ketika ini. Bagaimana untuk kita melihat bergerak ke hadapan untuk meranti dan juga usaha inovasi kita di peringkat antarabangsa dan juga skala apa yang disasarkan. Saya berbesar hati kerana bersama saya pada ketika ini Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Meranti sendiri, Zul Abu Bakar. Zul, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You've headed Meranti for 2 years. I mean, before this is TPM, and then another 1 year is under Meranti.
That's right.
Share with us the achievements under your helm for the past 2 years.
Okay, so I got in 2021. So I was appointed from my tenure in Magic. So I came into Magic in 2019, and then there was this discussion about merging the two entities, Magic and TPM. So then I was appointed to TPM in April 2021. So that was 2021 was my first year in TPM, and we worked on the merger of the two entities under this mandate called the Technology Commercialization Accelerator. So that was basically underpinning the merger of the two entities. So Meranti then was the new entity, or the merged co, the name of the merged co, which stands for the Malaysian Research Accelerator for Tech and Innovation.
Yes.
So it's a mouthful, tapi we wanted to sort of create a catchy sort of a name for the ecosystem to catch on. So it's Meranti Corp. Yeah. So it's Meranti Corp. So sekarang Meranti Corp is about a year now, because 2022 was technically our year 1. We are now in year 2. But in total, TPM's transformation has been over 2 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, in 2 years, what has been the biggest challenge for you, especially leading the TPM and also Meranti?
Okay, so I would say biggest challenge really is the structural integration of the two entities. You see, because when you talk about a merger, there are a number of things. You're looking at talent, you're looking at structure, you're looking at the entity in itself, the corporate structure. This is separate daripada mandate in itself, which is the Technology Commercialization Accelerator, which is meant to accelerate commercialization rate for the country. So that's the policy level or the policy driver for the merger in itself. But for the entity in itself, to create the entity, there were enormous challenges that we'd had to deal with in that sense. Simply put, Technology Park Malaysia ni is a 26-year-old entity. Yeah, it was incorporated in 1996. Magic is a younger entity, in fact, quite young, relatively, 7 years only. So you're merging an entity which is 7 years old and 26 years old, which also reflects in the difference of the talent that has been hired by the two entities. So really, I think it was a culture integration issue. talent management issue, and also structure in itself, because both of the entities were built on different foundations. So, like I said, year zero, the year of my entry, which was in 2021, I was just buried in documentations, you know, working out the structure, working with my team to work on the M&A process, because this was a corporate M&A for all intents and purposes. So I would think that our biggest achievement as far as the corporate structure is concerned is that today we have a clean structure. We have a structure whereby both entities operate harmoniously under one mandate, and we have the teams aligning to the new mandate, and we have used that to transform the park essentially, because at the end of the day, transformation, you want to make a transformation successful, you require a good team, great structure, and a strong vision, which has been put in place in the last 2 years.
In terms of the culture, do you think have we achieved to the level that we want in terms of taking innovation into the way forward in terms of innovation and also the culture?
So if you're looking at the culture within the organization, we have made great progress. Long way to go in that sense, because I think culture is one thing that needs to stand the test of time, which means you also need to innovate the way we look at culture. So saya rasa in the last 2 years we have sort of broken many barriers, and that would set the tone in terms of how we approach the ecosystem in totality. Because Meranti's mandate is basically to catalyze the technology commercialization ecosystem, to create more technology startups, to enable more local talents to realize their own potential, to say, look, we can create these technologies and we can make it global in that sense. And basically, in order to do that, you need the right culture. And the culture needs to start from the entity that is pushing this agenda.
Now let's talk about the mandate. Since you mentioned about that, I want to touch about the Global Innovation Index as well. Where are we? Where is Malaysia right now in terms of Global Innovation Index? And are we able to attain the target of the top 20 by 2030?
Personally, I think it's a very tall order. There's a lot to be done in order for us to achieve top 20. And if you look at the Global Innovation Index in itself, there are multiple aspects to actually achieving increase in your ranking. To this, I would say it is not just the task of one entity atau satu kementerian in that sense. So the entire country needs to come together to look at the drivers of the innovation index and to see how we can actually work together to raising the ranking. We've put in place, and this I think I speak on behalf of the ministry as well, we've put in place many initiatives to look at the various levers. This includes infrastructure, funding, policy, and various other things. Saya rasa last year, 2021, we dropped 3 ranks. So we have to catch up. So we have to play the catch-up game now, unfortunately.
But we are on the right track in terms of all the initiatives.
I would think so. I would think so.
All right. I want to talk about the key challenges because right now we'll talk about the ideas. Easy. We'll talk about the R&D. Some part of it quite easy, but commercialization. This is the challenge right now. Where are we in terms of commercialization under Meranti especially?
Okay, so at entity level, we look at commercialization targets or achieving commercialization targets through our programs. So we have a particular program that we actually introduced, and this was introduced during Magic Nya time. It's called the National Technology and Innovation Sandbox. In fact, when it was introduced, it was actually at the thick of pandemic, dalam pada tahun 2020 actually. And the purpose of the program was to stimulate local R&D and as well as adoption of local technology to market. Now with that, we try and track commercialization. So melalui program tu, we have commercialized close to 20 technologies. And we have also deployed about 50 million ringgit in terms of commercializing these technologies. So that's how we track within the entity in itself. But as a country, this is where our mandate as a technology commercialization accelerator comes in. But again, I want to reiterate that it is not the role of one entity to look at this, right? So there are multiple aspects towards creating a higher commercialization activity in that sense. So more entities, more participation of private sector, more VCs need to come in and support our local technologies, because funding is a key criteria for commercialization. Market acceptance is a key criteria for commercialization. To be able to test the product in a live environment is also a criteria for commercialization. So if we look at that all together, at the moment, Malaysia's commercialization rate isn't all that high. Setahu saya rasa we are just below 10%. In fact, we need to look at a more cohesive manner or a structured way of tracking commercialization rate. So that's one thing that we are working with our stakeholders dan juga kementerian sekarang ni lah. Because if we look at our neighbouring countries, Korea, Singapore, or even APAC in general, their commercialization rates are way higher. You know, in some countries they even touch 50%. So yeah.
How do we close these gaps? I know this isn't about overnight work, but it takes a lot of time. But there must be a lot of things that we can learn from other countries, especially in this region, that we can emulate in that sense under Meranti or under the other agencies. What effort, by Meranti that we can propel further to close these gaps?
Okay. Again, every country has its own unique challenges when it comes to dealing with sort of technology or innovation ecosystem in that sense. And every country has got, I would say, different starting point. In terms of awareness of the public, in terms of awareness of the market, education level, etc. In that sense, I think Malaysia, we have a lot of effort that is directed towards science and tech. In fact, even in our universities, we work very closely with our research universities today in Malaysia to try and create a lot more activities around commercializing our local technologies. But I think to your question around closing the gap, I feel that it is important for more private money to go into the ecosystem. It is very important for government to, of course, support at the early stages of the R&D, because there are certain. So when we look at, maybe just to put this into context, when you look at technology commercialization, you can segment the process into several stages. Usually in the early stages of research is probably where you would deal with the highest amount of risk, uncertainty, and you do not know whether the research would basically translate into a proper product. So in that sense, maybe in certain strategic areas, we encourage government to support fully at times. Tapi when you reach a stage of market acceptance or even pre-market acceptance, when there is an indication of market acceptance, we encourage our local technologists or local founders to work with international companies and as well as private capital, because that is where you would be able to grow your businesses. But it works both ways. But I also believe that government should attract more private capital into the country, into an ecosystem. So this is where we, as a government entity, we try and work with a lot more private entities. And this is local as well as internationally. So kita nak create that interest of the private sector to look at local technologies.
Okay. For Meranti as well, you have the prioritized tech areas.
Yes.
I remember the drone site, the 54, the
Area 57.
Area 57. Let's talk about the achievements for the prioritized tech areas in Meranti, basically. Where are we right now?
So we have a couple of areas. One, as you rightly mentioned, we have Area 57. Now, Area 57 is in line with our Malaysian Drone Tech Action Plan. So the Malaysian Drone Tech Action Plan was actually designed by Meranti. In fact, we are the lead agency where we look at how drone technology can enable the economy. So we look at drone technology as a horizontal that can be used across multiple industries. So in that study, we actually have anticipated for it to create 100,000 jobs by 2030 and also contribute to the economy in terms of GDP uplift. We're looking at about 50 billion, plus minus by year 2030. Now, in order to do that, we would require a live testing environment, which is what we created at the park in itself. It's called Area 57. It's basically 5 acres of land, which has been dedicated for purposes of testing and commercializing drone technology. Yeah.
All right, so last but not least, what's next for Meranti and in terms of partnership also for Meranti moving forward?
Okay, so, well, I say this a lot. I think the foundation has been laid out, and I believe that we have laid a strong foundation for Meranti. We've transformed the park. We've lifted the image of the park. We have seen entry of new partners, and I think we are in a position to say that we have interests of close to R1 billion right now in terms of investing into the park, and this includes land-based tenants and tenancies. So the activity, or how do you say, the excitement is already there. So next phase for Meranti is really just to see through the growth. We've planned it out. The next stage would be actually to leverage on all of these partnerships, to see what's next, to execute on our growth plan that has been set in place.
All right.
Yeah.
Zul, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That is Zulaira Abu Bakar, the Chief Executive Officer of Meranti. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Kita akan melihat seketika, kita akan kembali selepas ini dengan banyak lagi perkembangan dalam Niaga Awani.
Dipercayai bukan berpunca daripada aktiviti pembalakan.
Jadi kita kena pasti dululah aktiviti pembalakan dijalankan.
Masa depan Malaysia akan lebih cerah jika perhatian ditumpukan kepada situasi sebenar ekonomi negara.
Apakah nasib orang ramai dari segi kos hidup?
Pelaksanaan gaji minimum sebanyak RM1,500 melibatkan majikan yang mempunyai kurang